On September 22nd, the City of Fremont hosted a virtual community workshop on the city's Climate Action Plan update process. This video is a recording of the main meeting room. Please note that due to technical challenges, the recording starts about 3 minutes into Mayor Lily May's opening remarks. We hope that you enjoy this recording. Please email any questions or comments to sustainability@fremont.gov. Thanks for watching.
Today, actually, right before I just got here, I also had a chance to see, some of you may think of Tesla as an auto manufacturing, but Tesla also is involved in battery manufacturing. And so I was able to help kick off some of that. Here in Fremont, with over 900 manufacturers, we look at ways that we can be very sensitive in the environment, how we do the construction, and how we build. One of the things that I'm also very proud of in the city is our Warm Springs BART station, so transportation, and that is actually a LEED Silver project. And we also have several buildings such as Delta Electronics, which are net zero. Our ROP program, which the construction for the school is actually also LEED friendly. And we're so green in Fremont that even our nuns are very sensitive on green policies, and the Dominican sisters have abilities to catch rainwater, and they have solar over their buildings. So their community center is actually something that's also very friendly. Other projects that I think that when I describe Fremont and share with people, I said Fremont got brighter, and we don't just mean the people. A couple years ago, we took on a very aggressive initiative and actually had all of our street lights become LED lights. And that's part of our efforts to ensure that we are being sensitive in terms of having less cost for the electricity, but also being able to hopefully have better maintenance. We also, in getting people around right now, we are encouraging people as we look at our mobility commission that's now enacted, more bike and pedestrian friendly. So as we're trying to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and trying to be more conscientious, environmentally friendly, these are things that we're looking for. So from everything from city codes and policies, working with our council to support sustainable development and solar for new and multi-family housing. These are just part of our initiatives, and we hope to continue. One of the other businesses I was hoping to highlight is Sonic Manufacturing here in Fremont, and it's our first zero net energy manufacturing retrofit in the nation. And so by supporting clean tech and biotech and robust efforts in those areas, we can continue to do so. And we're hoping that tonight, when you're participating, you think about ways that you can help us in the community. Fremont also is very much involved in a green challenge, and it was an online climate action engagement platform. And I know I was looking through some of the names, and I've seen some of the youth have been participants and real leaders in these initiatives. For Greywater, I saw that we had our student, I'm trying to find her on the screen, but we have different student projects that we wanted to highlight. And I know Fierce is our student sustainability effort, and they've done everything from having environmentally friendly dinners, high school composting, food share efforts, and partnership with Stop Waste. They've raised awareness at the council level in terms of not using plastic bags and being more sensitive to straws and plastic, single-use plastics. So these are some of the things that we're hoping to discuss. We want to hear from you what we can do to do better, to what we're doing well, and how can we work with other public agencies, whether it's Stop Waste, with AC Transit, with our school district, and what can we do also with our businesses. And these are just some of the introductory dialogues that we're going to have right now. And as we work together to make Fremont greener, healthier, resilient, and a more equitable community, I look forward to hearing from the staff back on regarding some of the past and current climate planning efforts, and followed by the breakout rooms to hear some of the reports out in terms of what some of the feedback we're going to gain to this evening from our participants. So again, thank you so very much for the time, for the opportunity to hear from all of you how we can shape and build a better normal how we can stay healthy, safe, and keep our community and city environmentally friendly. Thanks for your time this evening.
Great, thank you so much, Mayor May. I'm going to pull up the slides now. Is everyone able to see the slides? All right, so I'm going to go over the history of local climate action in Fremont. So the city of Fremont has been dedicated to sustainability for some time now. In 2011, we adopted our general plan for 2030, which sets a vision to transition Fremont from an auto-oriented suburb to a sustainable, strategically urban and modern city. And the general plan actually has the opening chapter dedicated to sustainability, and each of the elements within the general plan have sustainability icons next to them to designate measures that align with the sustainability vision. Our climate action plan was adopted a year later in 2012, and that provides a framework for how we can achieve greenhouse gas emission reductions by a 25% reduction goal by the year 2020 from a 2005 baseline. Oops. Greenhouse gas emissions are measured in terms of metric tons of carbon dioxide in our climate action plan. And a metric ton is approximately equivalent to about a 27-foot cube or a 33-foot sphere. That's 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide. So you can see in the image here, comparing to a home, what 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide looks like. And greenhouse gas emissions drive climate change. Emissions come from a number of different sources. Primarily what we are measuring in our climate action planning efforts are electricity and natural gas usage in homes and buildings, the gasoline and diesel combustion from our passenger vehicles, trucks, and freight vehicles, industrial and factory emissions from processing, and then also waste and water transportation and decomposition in landfills. So in 2005, the city of Fremont was responsible for over 1.6 million metric tons of carbon dioxide annually. And remember, this is annually, so every year that much additional carbon dioxide is getting added to the atmosphere. By 2010, we updated our greenhouse gas emissions inventory and had achieved about a 10% reduction. But by 2015, didn't really see a change in those emissions. And the reason for that was, primarily we saw business slow in 2010 during an economic recession and then rebound successfully in 2015. So while we were seeing improvements in fuel efficiency, energy efficiency, we also had more going on. And so that kind of leveled itself out. We recently did our emissions update for the years 2017 through 2019. And by 2017, we had actually achieved our 2020 goal of 25% emission reductions, and have continued to chip away at emissions over the last couple of years as well. This graph shows the emissions by sector. So each year is showed in a gradation of blue. And you can see that there have been substantial emission reductions in certain sectors and not in others. The primary reductions we've seen are passenger vehicle emissions, which is really a result not of less people on the road, as we probably are all aware, but more so because of improvements in fuel efficiency, as well as adoption of clean vehicles, especially hybrids and plug-in electrics. In the freight vehicles, however, we've actually seen an increase in emissions, and that's because while fuel efficiency hasn't really changed too much, there have been slight improvements. We've seen more freight vehicles on the road, so it's more a product of total vehicle miles traveled. In the building sector, we have seen dramatic reductions in emissions coming from electric consumption in buildings, and that's a product of both improvements in energy efficiency and in the installation of rooftop solar systems, but even more so with the cleaning of the electric grid, so that most of our electricity coming from the grid is from renewable sources like solar and wind, or from no greenhouse gas emission sources such as large hydro. Building gas consumption, however, has remained pretty much flatlined because the emissions associated with each therm of gas burned is 11.7 tons of carbon dioxide, or pounds of carbon dioxide. And we've also seen a little bit of an uptick in the emissions from solid waste because we are generating more waste, and we are also doing a better job of accounting for the emissions associated with organics that end up in the landfill. So since our first climate action plan was adopted in 2012, we've done a number of things to work on reducing our emissions. The first is municipal projects. So as Mayor May mentioned, we have installed solar on a number of our facilities, including our police complex, our water park, the Irvington Community Center, our maintenance center, and then 3 of our fire stations, which actually have both solar and battery storage so that they can island from the grid. We have also done quite a bit to reduce our total energy consumption by replacing all of our streetlights with LEDs, and between both the solar installations and the LED installations, our municipal energy consumption went from 15 million kilowatt hours of electricity annually down to about 8.5 million kilowatt hours of electricity annually from the grid. We've also done some other big infrastructure efforts, which people can see when they are walking or driving around Fremont very readily, in terms of improving bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and making Fremont a safer place to get around without a vehicle. Another thing that we've done is update our city codes and policies to help promote and incentivize clean energy, electric vehicles, and the general switching away from fossil fuels. So a couple things to highlight, as Mayor May mentioned, is that we have adopted codes for mandatory solar in new home and multifamily construction, and we also are requiring electric vehicle readiness in new developments. Another thing we did a couple years ago was we adopted a solar preservation ordinance, which ensures that your roof will continue to have solar access even if there is development nearby. If a home decides to add a second story, they have to demonstrate that they will not shade your roof so that you will have the ability to put solar on your roof in the future. And most recently, the city adopted a fossil fuel divestment resolution and a carbon neutrality resolution. So the fossil fuel divestment resolution says that any of the financial holdings that the city has will not be associated with fossil fuels. And the carbon neutrality resolution, which we'll talk about later, sets a long-term carbon neutrality goal for the city by the year 2045. There's also a number of community programs. I'm not going to go in depth, but as Mayor May mentioned, we do have the Fremont Green Challenge, which is a residential climate action engagement platform for community members. We are also participating in East Bay Community Energy, which is our local clean energy provider that provides a cleaner mix of power for all residents and businesses in Fremont, and it functions as a nonprofit agency. So any revenue generated by East Bay Community Energy goes back into community programs related to energy efficiency and clean power. We also do a lot of work with Stop Waste. They are involved in our schools. They are involved with the city. They help us reduce our footprint related to total waste generated. They help us think about our climate policies. They work with students to institute food sharing and composting at schools. And they're a great nonprofit agency serving Alameda County. The city has committed to a number of large federal and global efforts related to climate action. We are a member of the Compact of Mayors. We are an EPA Green Power partner, and we signed on to the We Are Still In effort to say that even though the US government may have pulled out of the Paris Agreement, the city of Fremont is still committed to the goals that were set in that agreement. And we received a number of awards for our work, including the Beacon Award from the Institute for Local Government for our climate efforts, Soul Smart Gold Award for solar permit streamlining, the American Public Works Association Exceptional Performance Award for sustainability practices for our LED streetlight upgrade, and we are on the CDP Cities A-list for our climate reporting. A couple of things I wanted to touch on as well is that we have some major trends in Fremont in terms of solar adoption. You can see between the year 2016 till now, we've actually doubled our total amount of solar capacity, and we've doubled our total, or more than doubled, the total amount of electric vehicles owned by Fremont residents. And these are things that will continue to drive the emissions associated with passenger vehicles and the emissions associated with electricity consumption down to zero. Robbie, are we able to do some live polling, or should we continue on?
Yes, we are back with some live polling. So I'm going to put up our first live poll. And I just wanted to see, with all this great work we're doing, how it's landing for people. So you could tell us what your level of awareness and participation has been. All right, I'll leave it open for about 3 or 4 more seconds. And you can see that we've got kind of a mix of people. It looks like some people are here for the first time. They're learning some things. Rachel, you've dropped some knowledge bombs. And then we've got some people who are already out there getting involved, which is great. So I think we have one more poll for you all. Let me pull that out. And with all this that we're doing and these goals that we have, which we're going to talk more about in a sec, would love to hear what level of change you think is needed out there in order for us to really tackle climate change. Okay. All right, and it looks like people are looking for some real action and progress on climate change are the people who went ahead and clicked, so that's good. That means we're moving in a good direction. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Rachel.
All right, thanks, Robbie. Let me go back to sharing my screen. All right, so with that, you have some background on what we've done, what's going on in the broader context, and why should we update our climate action plan now? Oh, sorry about that. I need to share my screen again. Always a learning process. Shoot. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see the screen. So since the time of industrialization, we have seen across the globe an annual mean temperature increase of over 1 degree Celsius from a normal temperature. And you can see, especially since the post-war World War II era, emissions have really continued to climb pretty rapidly. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a UN body, they've made a special report on global warming in 2018. They predicted that we'll hit 1.5 degrees Celsius warming between the years 2030 and 2052. And once we go above 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, they predict that we will experience a number of issues, including extreme heat, heavy precipitation, drought, sea level rise, ecosystem degradation, and species loss across the planet. And the impacts that it will have on people will really involve our health, our livelihoods, food security, our water supplies, human security, and economic stability. This is a really interesting map that was just produced by the New York Times that shows the most extreme climate stress across different parts of the nation. And this is not to say that that's the only vulnerability that we have, but you can see in Alameda County, for instance, our water stress risk is the highest. and sea level rise, extreme rainfall, and wildfire are all medium risks for us. And in the Bay Area, which is home to almost 8 million people, we have multiple climate threats facing us. And the highest level of impact varies depending on which area you're looking at, but we're all facing sea level rise, wildfires, water stress, and rainfall changes. In the Bay Area, we have seen an increase of 1.7 degrees Fahrenheit, or almost 1 degree Celsius, between the years 1950 and 2005 alone. And sea level in the Bay Area has risen over 8 inches in the last 100 years. Between 2012 and 2016, the extreme drought that we faced led actually to the most severe moisture deficits in the last 1,200 years. The current status of climate action globally, our plan locally sunsets this year, and the Paris Agreement, which was signed on by almost every nation in the world, set a goal of staying 1.5 degrees below Celsius, or staying below 1.5 degrees Celsius in that 2030 to 2052 timeframe. We don't have a lot of federal action on climate change currently. The U.S. had announced its intent to pull out of the Paris Agreement, which will take effect at the end of President Trump's term. Whether or not the U.S. government decides to rejoin the Paris Agreement will be up to administrations in the future. But California does have ambitious goals for energy, climate, and carbon neutrality already. And we're seeing a global uprising, especially from the youth across the globe, for a call to address our climate emergency and rapidly decarbonize our way of life. In California, we adopted the Global Warming Solutions Act that set a goal to meet our 1990 levels of greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2020, reduce them 40% below 1990 levels by the year 2030, and initially to achieve an 80% reduction below 1990 levels by 2050. Before the end of Governor Brown's term, he passed an executive order to establish a carbon neutrality goal of 2045 and said that by 2046 forward, the state of California will be a carbon negative state. And California's climate strategy involves a number of different actions across various sectors, including renewable energy goals, reduction in petroleum use in vehicles, so rapid electrification of vehicles, doubling energy efficiency, carbon sequestration, or drawing down the carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere back into plants, and also addressing short-lived climate pollutants or emissions from sources that are much higher potential, such as methane. So with that larger context, we also have a common cause. We know the problem and the science is there. We have a number of solutions that we've already been implementing and can continue to implement. And sustainability is really our way to get there. So with that, Robbie, do we want to do another live poll?
Sure. Let's play with fire. So folks, here's your next poll. Just talking a little bit about the changing context. We'd love to hear if you feel like you are personally impacted by climate change. All right, I'm going to give it 2 or 3 more seconds. And it does look like most people feel that way, with 62% of us saying yes, we're already impacted. Sorry, I'll go ahead and share that. And so that is a strong sign that this is good work to be doing. All right. So I've got one more question for you here. about who do we think should be the one who is implementing climate action policies. At what level do we think we should be acting on it? You can click multiple responses for this question. Awesome, awesome. I do apologize. I know some of the polls have been closing quicker, so I've been trying to keep them open longer. This one's been open for about 45 seconds, so I'm going to go ahead and end that and share the results with you all so you can see. And it really does look like people had a variety of responses about who they'd like to see take action, including the federal government and the state of California. And us here on the local front. So with that, Rachel, I'll pass it back to you to talk a little bit more about what we're looking to do going forward.
All right, thanks, Robbie. All right, so we are now updating our climate action plan, and we are going to share what our kind of general framework, vision, and process is for the CAP update before we send you to breakout rooms to discuss. As I mentioned, in February 2019, the City Council adopted a carbon neutrality resolution, and that set the City of Fremont forward with a goal of achieving carbon neutrality by the year 2045, similar to the executive order established by the state of California in 2018. We also established an interim target of achieving a 55% emissions reduction by the year 2030. And finally, we established a post-carbon community framework that really sets us up for how our community can get to carbon neutrality and continue to be a sustainable and resilient place to live over the years to come. And that post-carbon community framework includes 4 overarching values as well as 7 key strategies. Before I share those, I did want to define carbon neutrality in case anybody was wondering. So when we think about our carbon emissions, and with our first climate action plan, we were really focused on mitigation measures, which is reducing the emissions coming from various sources. So gaseous carbon, is greenhouse gas emissions, and that's typically emitted from the tailpipes of vehicles and from burning energy in our homes and businesses. And then carbon is sequestered by the planet in the form of plants and trees through photosynthesis. So as those plants breathe in the carbon dioxide, they turn that carbon into a solid form and breathe out oxygen for humans. And that is also referred to as, sequestration or drawing down carbon dioxide. We also talk about, as I mentioned, mitigation, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and adaptation. And in our first climate action plan, we didn't discuss adaptation in as nearly a robust manner as local governments are now, because we're really starting to see the impacts of climate change. And most of you in the polling responded that you are feeling the impacts yourself. So climate change mitigation, as I mentioned, is reducing emissions, while adaptation is really seeking to address the impacts of climate change that we are already experiencing in our communities. And those actions may be similar in some ways, but they also may be different in other ways. So our post-carbon community framework establishes some values for really what we want to see in our community moving forward. The first is equity and access, and that's ensuring that all people have the opportunity to benefit equally from our climate solutions, while also not taking on an unequal burden of the climate impacts. Efficiency and innovation is about promoting the efficient use of resources and the adoption of clean and climate smart technologies and techniques. Health and wellness is focusing on safeguarding and enhancing the ability of the community to live, work, play, connect, and thrive in healthy social and physical environments. And resiliency and capacity building is providing the education and training on opportunities offered by a more resilient future and encouraging sustainable behaviors across all sectors of our community. We also established 7 key strategies for getting to carbon neutrality and becoming a post-carbon community. These strategies are the kind of main emission reduction strategies, and there will be a number of measures that we are going to be vetting in the coming months related to each of these strategies that will actually reduce emissions, will help us adapt, will bring us toward a greater level of community resiliency. The first is clean and renewable power. So really thinking about deploying and efficiently using clean, renewable, and locally sourced electricity that's generated either on-site or through the grid. The second is electrification and the phase out of fossil fuels. So replacing and upgrading carbon-intensive fossil fuel-based infrastructure and combustion power throughout the transportation and building sectors with clean electric power. Third is carbon sequestration, as I mentioned already. So that's drawing down carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases from the atmosphere through ecological methods. They could also be technology or technological methods. And then capturing and storing that carbon in plants, soils, water systems, and other solid forms. And fourth is mobility and connectivity. So developing and enhancing safe, multimodal, accessible, equitable, intelligent and clean motorized and non-motorized travel options, transit modes, transportation infrastructure, and community connectivity, which could be not even vehicle-based, such as what we're doing right now, connecting with each other via the internet. The fifth is resource conservation and the elimination of waste. So thinking about conserving natural and manufactured resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials, really driving us toward the goal of zero waste. The sixth is a restorative ecology and green infrastructure. And that's really the idea of restoring, rehabilitating, and repurposing degraded, damaged, or destroyed ecosystems and habitats through active interventions and incorporating green infrastructure and ecosystem services into the design of our community resources. And finally, climate adaptation and resilience is preparing for, limiting, and learning from, and adapting to the negative effects of climate change through proactive and holistic planning and response at the infrastructural, cultural, and institutional levels. So I know those definitions are complex, and I didn't put all those words on the screen, but hopefully you get a sense of what that will look like in the community moving forward. The vision for our Climate Action Plan 2.0 is that it will use this post-carbon community framework as the foundation for measures that we develop. We'll build upon the best practices and successes that we've seen under our first Climate Action Plan. We'll also be looking at regional job and housing growth projections and factoring that into our goals related to emissions reductions. Well, we want to analyze the impact of changing statewide policy and technology trends. We know that there are a number of goals that we have at the state level already, and those will continue to change over time. We want to make sure we're incorporating those. I don't think that most people on this call or in the industry really understood the impact that electric vehicles would have 10 years ago, for instance. We really want to identify opportunities for increased local action. We know that things will change at the regional, the statewide, and the federal level, and we're really looking for what is it that the city itself can do to help fill the gap for emissions reductions and focus on deep decarbonization measures, or measures that are going to get us those deep emissions reductions as much as possible. We also want to integrate climate mitigation and adaptation strategies, thinking about how are we going to be more resilient to changes now and in the future, as well as help reduce the impact of those over time. And finally, we're going to streamline our implementation measures with the California Environmental Quality Act so that as projects come into our community development department, we can align them with our climate action plan as much as possible. And those projects will have a checklist to demonstrate that they are, in fact, aligning with the goals established in our climate action plan. Finally, I wanted to draw attention to the fact that the most climate vulnerable individuals and communities, are the ones that are going to experience the impacts the most and may have the least access to resources. These are medical baseline residents and disabled community members. They could be the non-English speaking residents of our community. They can be people from low-income households. They can be our homeless community members, and they can also be youth and seniors. So we want to ensure that the voices of these frontline communities are heard as we're looking at the measures we're adopting, so that people who maybe don't have the ability to buy an electric vehicle and to put solar on their roof are still able to benefit from the solutions to climate change. And to sum up, we really are aligning with common goals that we all have. Everybody wants to be healthy. We all want to feel safe and secure, and we want to have a good quality of life. And we would really like to have economic stability and prosperity in our lives. So our climate action plan is going to take into account these common goals as we think of solutions for the future. In terms of timeline, you can see we are here in the summer fall of 2020. We just went into fall yesterday, where we're doing robust community engagement, visioning, and forecasting. This is one of a number of community workshops we'll be holding. We'll also be working to reach out to different segments of the community to get feedback related to the business sector, youth, seniors, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, etc. Over the fall and winter, we're going to continue to develop policies and measures, get feedback on those, start drafting the climate action plan in its first format and reviewing it. And by the spring, we hope to have a finalized plan that we will be vetting with our Environmental Sustainability Commission, Planning Commission, and City Council. And with that, we'll do another live polling. Robbie?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, so that was a lot of great information about what's ahead with our climate action plan. I know we dropped over the last 20 minutes a lot of information just about climate action in general. So we'd love to just take a moment to hear how you're feeling. And I'll do my best to keep this poll open for as long as possible. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share that with everyone. And you can see that we've got a variety of different reactions to climate action and our efforts, but most people are feeling hopeful, which is good. And I see a strong set of people are motivated as well. Rachel, if you want to reshare your screen, or are we just going to head into the next section here?
Yeah, so I can, but it's just a breakout room slide. So Robbie, do you want to talk about what we're doing next?
Sure. So, we've been hearing from you in the poll results. I've seen a pretty active chat as well with people weighing in with their ideas and questions. And we're going to have about 20 minutes in breakout rooms for us to get in a little bit more of a discussion. So in a second, we'll be opening up those rooms and having everyone jump in, and each room will have a facilitator who'll be the one who kind of will be guiding the discussion, as well as we'll have another person there who's kind of taking notes on what's going on. So we invite you to come in and share your opinions and ideas. The facilitator will give you one or two different questions that you can take a swing at. And those questions will kind of be asking you about what are your priorities for our climate action plan, as well as you've seen us talk about the post-carbon framework and the values we're working with. If you have a particular value you'd want to see represented really well, we'd love to hear about that too. So with that, I'll go ahead and leave it to our host, Maria, to open up the breakout rooms.
All right, I think most people are back now. So thank you everyone for participating in the breakout session. I hopped around to many of the different breakout rooms and heard some interesting comments related to incorporating more natural spaces, providing, better ways for people to get around other than cars. I heard a comment about the connection between labor unions and climate and protection of trees and wanting to see more solar in parking lots. So all sorts of really interesting feedback from folks, and really appreciate your willingness to participate and share your thoughts. And I'm gonna share my screen one more time here. Actually, we wanted to do another live poll. So Robbie, will you bring up our last polling questions?
Gladly. So this is just the final poll here. Wanting to hear about your experience so far. Go ahead and give us your opinion. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close that out and share that with. Looks like people had a pretty good time tonight. Learned some things, felt engaged, and we'd love to see that. And we will keep that in mind as we look forward to our upcoming events and continuing on with our update process, which Rachel, I'll pass it to you to talk more about.
All right, great. Thanks, Robbie. Guess there's a couple people who are unsatisfied. I wish I could make everyone happy. So if you do have some comments you'd like to share with us on ways we can make it even better, please don't hesitate to reach out via email in the future as well. So some next steps here. We will be holding some additional community workshops in the fall. We plan on focusing one of our workshops around the topic of our initial climate action plan measure list, getting review from members of the public and feedback on what those measures look like. If you'd like to see changes to them, or remove some of them, add others, we definitely want to have an interactive session for that workshop. And then another workshop will be focused more heavily around the topics of resilience, equity, and community connections. We definitely saw that people today are feeling the impacts of climate change already in their lives. I think it's, at front of mind, considering most of us were unable to even spend time outside, and we haven't been able to leave our homes too much anyway because of the pandemic, and with the smoke and the day of orange that we experienced a couple weeks ago, I think we all really appreciate having clean air and blue skies around us. So it'd be great to have you join and talk more about how we can be more resilient, and also make sure that we're including those equity considerations throughout our CAP planning. Over the fall and winter, we're going to do some outreach to key community sectors as well. So if you have a group, a community organization, a club, a church, a classroom, any place where multiple people gather virtually right now and spend time together, and you think that they would be interested in providing input on this topic, please let us know. We'd love to share information and get feedback from your different groups. So that could include youth, seniors, environmental orgs, faith-based and cultural organizations, neighborhood associations, We also are going to be doing some targeted outreach to key small businesses and industry, healthcare providers, the Fremont Unified School District, the Alameda County Water District, PG&E, East Bay Community Energy, etc., as we think more about education and infrastructure and security of our natural resources. We also plan on doing an online polling surveying platform where we can get direct feedback on some of the measures that we're considering. And our hope is to launch this in the fall as well. So as that becomes available, we'll make additional announcements to the community about the availability of that platform. And finally, we just wanted to invite you to stay connected. As we mentioned a couple times, we have our Fremont Green Challenge residential climate action engagement platform. That's the third link listed here, where you can sign up as a household and explore different opportunities for how you can reduce your household footprint in a number of different ways. Some of those are, through installing solar or getting an electric vehicle, big decisions, but others are, free or low cost measures that really relate to behavior change. And if you're a student, you can be the one to lead those changes in your home as well. Related to our Green Challenge platform, we have our Fremont Green Challenge newsletter with a couple thousand subscribers, people who have joined the platform. Oops, there we go. People who have joined the platform or who have signed up to stay informed at workshops. We send out a newsletter on typically a monthly basis. There was a little bit of a hiatus during the beginning of the shelter in place, but we try to send out information related to upcoming topics, changes in things that are happening related to policies or new incentive programs that might be of interest to community members. And if you have something going on in a community-based organization that you participate in, we're also happy to share that information out if it makes sense for the rest of the community to hear about as well. And we've done that with some nonprofit organizations in the past. And finally, so I'm going up here, our city website, fremont.gov/climate action, will be the landing page for our update process. So you will be able to find information about any upcoming workshops, and we will be updating some of the information related to our most current greenhouse gas inventories on that page as well. So anything that you hope to find, we will try to put there. And if you can't find it there, you can always email us. So here are our email addresses. Myself, R. DeFranco at fremont.gov, and Robbie can be reached at rbarton@fremont.gov. Again, if you have any follow-up questions or if you want to share additional thoughts and ideas, we welcome you to send us an email, and we're happy to hop on a call as well if you have some additional thoughts or if you have a group you want us to speak to. So with that, I want to thank you all again for joining, and it looks like we're able to end right on time. I appreciate everybody's support today in making this meeting run as smoothly as possible, from Fremont City staff, their team members at Ascent Environmental, and our sustainability commissioners. And for all of those who participated, I hope you have a great night. And if you haven't had dinner already, please go eat.